What's up, Knotfest? This is Daniel Dekay hanging out at AFTERSHOCK 2022. I have the esteemed pleasure of hanging out with the one and only Paige Hamilton right now. What's going on, man?
Hey, Daniel, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm really good. Dude, I'm stoked to have you here. I've been listening to your music my entire life, and I feel like you got a really interesting story and a route to rock stardom. Not a lot of dudes in the rock arena scene go the academic route. I'm wondering what, like, the early motivators and, moving to New York and, studying jazz. What's the motivator to do that, and ultimately how do you end up in a rock band?
It's a long story. It's a long, boring story, but I was just obsessed. I became kind of obsessed with jazz when I was probably 18, 19 years old. I was going to the University of Oregon as a pre-med major, flunking out, but I was the champion beer chugger of the Clark Walton dorm complex, and so I flunked out and decided I really wanted to be a musician, more than anything. So I went to the community college and kind of did a crash course. They learned to read music and did ear training, did all this stuff, and just I was so into it. And then I auditioned at the University of Oregon and got in on classical guitar and jazz guitar, and got pretty much A's after that. So I was just meant to do that. I wasn't meant to be a doctor. The New York thing came about talking to a drummer friend of mine, Barry Lehman, from way, way, way back about just New York and how much it meant to us as musicians and the scene and all the people that were there, our heroes from, all moved there from Charlie Parker from Kansas City, Miles from St. Louis, Coltrane and Monk from North Carolina. Everybody was in New York.
Right.
And it just was important to me to go there. And so I auditioned at Manhattan School of Music in 1984 or 5, something like that, and went to grad school. And but after school, jazz musicians make $250 a year if you're lucky. I just started auditioning for bands around New York City, and most of them were not interesting. But this band of Susans I really liked, and then I was in that band for a while, and I started writing songs, but they weren't right for that band. And long story short, I decided to leave and form Helmet. So that was with an ad in the Village Voice. I met John Stanier. And then we auditioned Henry. I think we met Stanier first, and then we auditioned Henry, and there we went. So
the Village Voice is where all incredible legendary bands begin. You know that, right?
Amazing. Yeah, it was a free paper back then as well in 1989 when we formed this band. I left Band of Susans in late '88, I think, something like that. And then formed Helmet, and it was just a good place to be, I think, to start a band at that time in New York. There was I moved downtown. I used to live uptown when I was in school. 141st between Broadway and Riverside. I moved down to the East Village, and you could walk to CBGB's. It was, really like 3 blocks from my apartment. And we'd go, that was our kind of living room. We'd go see bands. We'd meet, I'd run into, Kim Deal there from the Pixies, or, Frank Black and Sonic Youth. And people would just go there to see shows. And I saw bands like Prong and Skunk, and I can't remember who else, Swans. Lou Barlow's thing, Sebado, his very first show ever I saw there. It was just a great hang, a great scene, and there were bands like Surgery and Unsane and, around in the East Village, Honeymoon Killers, Rat-A-Rat-R, Live Skull, all these cool bands, and kind of noisy, New York noisy things. And we were into noisy, but we were also into heavy. And AC/DC's, those are my gods. It's my favorite band. And I love the groove and the heavy stuff, and so no bands were really doing that in New York.
Right.
So we kind of became the heavy metal stepchild of the downtown noise scene, I guess, because we were noisy, but obviously much heavier than a lot of those bands are. So.
Totally. Was the love for rock always there? Like, I know
yes.
It's just jazz is more accessible for an academic route, right? Like, is that what it is?
I mean, it's, to be honest with you, like, I play guitar because of Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, and I was, as a teenager, I bought In Through the Outdoor the day it came out. But when the stuff on the radio, I wasn't so into the rock, and I'm not going to slag any bands. They're great musicians, bands like, Foreigner and Toto and Journey and who else, I don't know. Like, it just didn't float my boat, And my friends were, are like, oh, Jimmy Page over here, like Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin. I'm like, those were my bands. But when I in college, I thought I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, So I thought, and I really got into jazz, and it was kind of my punk rock because I grew up in a small town and there weren't a lot of concert. We had Heart, it was a big concert. I saw Rush, which was amazing, and Blue Oyster Cult, Black Oak, Arkansas, bands like that. But we didn't get Zepp or AC/DC or anything like that.
Right.
So I don't know. I just got into it, and I kind of was like, I enjoyed that I had this thing to myself, that I wasn't, getting stoned with my friends listening to Boston at the Gorge,
Right.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. I just was into a different thing,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, and jazz is the people are like, I don't hear any jazz in your music. It's like because it's Helmet, what I mean. But the things that influenced me were the feel, swing. That much like AC/DC or Led Zeppelin swings to me, that and then my kind of harmonic exploration, Helmet. We have these chord voicings that are very unlike what bands are doing. There's a lot of extensions and alterations, major 7 sharp 11s, 13s, and simple. It's simple, but I remove the thirds from a lot of the chords and get these cool voicings. So
like anyone who says they don't see music theory in Helmet's music just doesn't know music theory.
Yeah,
to be honest.
We were talking about this last night. How many people try to play Helmet songs, and we've had people sit in with us at sound check. Bands we've toured with. I'm like, let me do one song, and
They're
I'm
playing
like,
stacked 5 power chords and
well,
shit. You're like, that's
do you
not the
know
voicing.
it? Do you know the song? It's like, it's like, well, this is 6 against 4, so you completely, screw the pooch on this one, and they don't get the sort of subtle things like there's an extra beat here, so it's supposed to just be, you're supposed to be able to just bang your head. It's kind of, I liken it to the intro to Highway to Hell, where Phil comes in, where he plays, Baku Gak, he plays the riff like that, and you kind of fall out of your chair, and I always love that kind of, the subtle things that are just, really creative and fun, So we're doing a song, in fact, I Know tonight, and I think we're doing Turned Out as well, and it's in 5, the verse is in 5, and people are like, how does that work? And I'm like, it just does. You should try it sometime.
You have to meet like a skill requirement level to get on stage and jam a song with Helmet.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not letting you fuck this one for us.
So many people have they don't have good time, and you have to have good time to play this music,
Hell yeah.
period. It's like there's a pulse, and any great music. I mean, if you're listening to James Brown, there's a time continuum. The time is there. That's why they can play so sparsely. You know what I mean? It's like, and we don't play to any machines or backing tracks or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, I like that, the sort of ebb and flow that comes with an ensemble. So
yeah. Let's talk more music shit. Like, you're currently sitting in front of me holding one of the most beautiful guitars I've ever seen.
Yes.
I know you're an OG ESP guy. You've been with the company since '87. When you go to the U.S. shop in North Hollywood, you walk in the front door and your picture's right in the fucking lobby, man. Like, you're been with this company a long time. I play them too. They're the best guitars in the world.
Yeah.
Tell me about this one. Tell me about your love affair with the company in general.
This one we just released. I think it was not released, but we did. We released the LTD version of this last year. It was something that my manager asked me about, and Matty, who's the president, and he's he's a really good friend and just always has looked after me, and I feel great loyalty to them. When we had just started out, we were we had a 7-inch out on Amphetamine Reptile, and my bass player Henry came to me and said, hey, I have this buddy, Baker Rorick. He works at this company called ESP. They're on 48th Street. They'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, really? And I gave him, what little music we had at the time, like a demo tape and a 7-inch, and we were on the cover of something like Flipside or whatever. And they were like, "This is really cool. Do you want to do a guitar?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I always had this kind of, to me, the punk rock aesthetic is not doing what everyone else is doing and not being in a fashion plate. And everybody, I will say, there was kind of a look in New York in the downtown noise scene at the time, and I thought, man, ESP. And I played a bunch of guitars on 48th Street, is where their shop was at the time. And I found my original Magenta ESP, and it was just an amazing guitar. And in fact, when Paul Reed Smith was recruiting me years later, I took that guitar to the Paul Reed Smith factory and stood with Paul and Bonnie, his artist rep, and a bunch of the people that worked there, and they just couldn't believe that this guitar was such a beautifully made, amazing instrument. And I plugged it into a Marshall, and I said, I get this. Love Paul Reed Smiths. They're great guitars. I have a couple of them. They're really great. But people are like, well, your guitar's made in Japan, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I've been to the factory in Tokyo.
Of the best things are, my friend.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
and they're just like, when you get off the elevator on each floor at ESP in Tokyo, and they're like, they say a few things in Japanese, and then they're like, Pedro Hamilton, El Metto, and then they're all sitting there like the neck division. They're making necks, and they're just sitting listening, and then they all start clapping, and you're like, hey, peace, and then you go to the body level. It's like they're just so good. They're just so thorough, and I use them. I have. I don't know how many I have. I have LTDs and ESPs, and I use them. I do a fair amount of film work and TV stuff. I did.
Do you any of those E2s? Do you the Japanese-made E2s? Have you played any of
I
those?
don't know. I don't know that.
They have another great guitar in Japan, the E2 series.
Oh, cool.
Get Tony to send you one of those, man. They're fun.
Yeah, cool. Well, I use the LTDs. I have these sustainer pickups in them, not to pimp anybody else, but Fernandez makes the version of the Alan Hoover Sustainiac pickup that works really well for film work stuff. If you want like a cello sound or anything like feedback, and so I use those, the LTDs, and they're amazing instruments. This is a very affordable guitar for people. We were gonna just do 24 of them and said, well, hopefully they'll sell, and within 4 hours they were sold out. So like, Matt, we got to do another 24. So we sold out we only did like a limited edition, and they sold out in a day and a half.
I saw you do like the private sales kind of stuff. I saw you do it yourself. That's super cool, man.
That's because they treat me like family, and that's how I feel. I mean, I love going over there. I got Tony's has been there for a long time now, but he was the new kid about 10 years ago, and I got Renee and Eric Gonzalez are two techs that are just phenomenally talented and just really good. I don't know. I just everybody there is just they're good people, and I feel very, very fortunate.
Only the best for the best, dude. Paige, thank you so much for hanging.
My
it was great
pleasure,
to talk
Daniel.
shop with you for a little bit, man.
You too.
Super stoked for the set. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be good fun. Thanks for having me,
dude. Cheers.
Cool. All right, cheers.